welcome back to another session on email writing. Previously, we read about multiple things that related to email, and one of the most important things here was the subject line. So, when we're talking about an email subject line, this is actually the first text that is visible after the to the receiver after the sender's name. So, this is where exactly and how your email reaches someone else's inbox. Thus, it becomes all the more important to keep a close eye on this subject line while you're framing it. We saw an example of a bad email previously, wherein we were talking about why and what things made it a bad email. Let's analyze in this session the good example of an email. When we're talking about all the topics that need to be covered in a good email, that is the subject line most of all. It needs to be catchy, it needs to be appropriate, it needs to be short and crisp. Next, you need to make sure that you are keeping it of the perfect length. You're not adding too many details, neither are you compressing it into be too short. Here, let's read it. Subject is revisions for sale report. It says, "Hi Jackie, thanks for sending the report last week. I read it yesterday and I feel that chapter 2 is something where it needs more specific information about the sales figure. I also felt that the tone could be more formal. Could you amend it with these comments in mind? Thanks for your hard work on this, Monica." Monica then follows this up with a separate email about the PR departmental meet. So if you see and recall the previous email versus this email, there's a vast difference. Here, we're talking only about one topic, which is the topic that relates to my report. How is the report? What was it all about? What needs to be added there? And there's a small question as well here. Could you please amend these? That means we're asking for amendment and we're asking for the revised version of the report. Thanks for your hard work on this, the closure, and we are closing it with the name. Here, we're not adding any official details after the email. Reason is very simple, that when we are talking about this is a conversation between two colleagues. So you need not mention other details here. Taking you further here, we have some of the pointers that need to be kept in mind as to why we need to be extra polite when it comes to email writing. Here, we're talking about a small change that has to be made. Rather than the tone, we have to focus on being polite. It says that email is a reflection of your professionalism. Even if you have to convey a harsh message, the tone has to be such that it is very simple and it becomes all the more easy for people to understand what you're trying to convey. So through this particular liner, we understand that it is giving how or reflecting how you look at a particular scenario. Email displays your value system and attention to detail. It's not that you have to convey a bad news. Emails are the worst possible communication methods. But if you're trying to convey some information which is very important and you have to be polite while conveying it, certain level of formality needs to be maintained when it comes to making the emails classy. How is this to be maintained and what are the things that have to be kept in mind? Like my subject line, my salutations, my greetings. This is how basically you will break the ice and you will form a position in the mind of the reader. The recipient may decide to share the email with others. Thus, you have to be very polite and you have to make sure that you're not being informal here. Because if the email has to be shared with other people in the same organization, it would sound not good. Next, it says that when we're talking about being polite, what are the things that we have to take care of? First, avoid informal language. We made sure that when we're writing a formal email, informal language is something that has to be avoided to the maximum extent. Unless and until you are on good terms with someone. But even after that, to show a little amount of professionalism there, it is important that we keep it aside. Do not forget that you are using the appropriate greetings and you are making sure that your message is clearly stated. You're not adding any ifs and buts. And if there are any things, any clauses that have to be read carefully, they have to be highlighted in the same fashion. Do not use slangs in any email. This is a very common problem with the generation of today, wherein we have grown up with this use of slangs. Next says, do not use jargons. When we're talking about jargons, these are special idioms, expressions, technical terms, acronyms, abbreviations that we use within the organization. Like a pipeline is something that we use in our organization to tell that this content or this piece of information is still under review. It has not been finalized so far. This is a term I can use with my colleagues who are working in the same organization because they'd be more aware about this term. LMS, the learning management system or the software, is used within the organization. People outside my organization, it will be very difficult for them to recognize and identify what is it that I'm talking about. That's the reason your message should be very clear and absolutely simple. Do not get it complicated. Do not add more ifs and buts to it. Avoid using abbreviations to the maximum extent. Otherwise, you'll have to write and repeat your statements if they are not understood clearly in the previous email. This will make you a bad writer and might often affect your professional growth as well. Why is it that we need to check the tone of the email while we are writing? A lot many times during the face-to-face conversation, the body language, the facial expressions, the vocal tone, etc. is usually assessed to judge what is it that the person is feeling. We might see some people who are, stage conscious, jitter a lot when they come to deliver a speech. The same thing is visible in an email through the tone of the email. Email robs us of this information, and this means that we can't tell when the person has misunderstood our message. Usually, when we are providing clear details, we're keeping our sentences shorter. We're not using any slangs. We're not using any jargons. We're not using any technical terms or abbreviations. That is where we're expecting the other person might have understood. But keeping in mind that each person has an individual perspective and a sense of understanding, we can never judge this, that when is it that the person has understood it in the right frame of mind, and when is it that the person has not understood it. This is the only glitch when it comes to writing an email. Thus, at times, we might also need to make a face-to-face call or a video call, or a telephonic conversation needs to be arranged to understand what is it that the other party has understood. Thus, checking the tone to avoid any kind of misunderstanding is very much important. If a person who's the reader has misunderstood the message, that is where it's going to spoil the entire relationship. Now, when we're talking about the methodologies of checking the tone, let's understand how we can check it. First, choose your words wisely. You know that there are several words which have multiple meaning. Avoid using such words which cause simple misunderstanding. The sentence length plays a huge part. For example, if I'm writing an email to my friend and I'm conveying all the woes of my life, and I say, I hate my boss and he hates me too, and there's nothing good that's happening in life. This is because my kids are usually upset all the time. They're cribbing, they're crying. They're just because I'm not able to earn enough money to get them good clothes or good toys. There are multiple thoughts that have been involved in this particular sentence. I need to make sure that when I'm talking about multiple thoughts coming here, I am talking about multiple fold misinterpretation coming here. Maybe the person has not understood that I am unhappy with my job or with my boss. The person understands that I am simply unhappy with the fact that here my kids are not happy just because of the little salary that I earn. You have to make sure that we're using punctuations at the correct place. This has become a common phenomenon where we see and we read multiple question tags being played after every question, multiple full stops being placed after every question, multiple exclamatory marks being placed after every question. This is a redundant habit. we should be avoiding it to the maximum extent. Why? The reason is very basic and very simple. When we are using one single full stop, one single exclamatory mark, and one single question mark, they play the same role as those 4 full stops, 4 question marks, and 4 exclamatory marks play. It's a disaster that you're committing. Capitalization of all letters should be avoided because it breaks my readability. Here, the reader, if the readability breaks, that means you're unable to understand something, or you're unable to gauge what is it that the person is trying to say. That is where the reader wouldn't want to read it anymore. Let's see an example for the same. Emma, I need your report by 5 p.m. today, or I'll miss my deadline. Harry. Note Emma might think that Harry is frustrated or angry based on the tone of his email. It could have simply been stated in other words, wherein the person should have conveyed in a polite tone that it is important to share the report before the decided time. Otherwise, it's going to be a difficult task. Let's see here how we can reframe this. It says, "Hi, Emma. Thanks for all your hard work on that report. You're thanking the other person because the other person has worked for you. Could you please get your version over to me by 5 p.m.? I am requesting here." The tone is really polite. "So that I don't miss my deadline." That's a question that I'm asking. Could you please do that? Thanks so much. This is in advance, Harry. This email is more of a request. We are not putting any kind of pressure here rather than an order, and it represents, or it presents, the recipient with a choice. It's not overbearing. I'm not overpowering. I'm not showing my superiority over somebody. I am requesting somebody to do the same. With this, I would want to put the session to a pause. Thank you so much. Stay tuned.